Whereas Bitcoin, you have to be honest and truthful because there is no other choice, right? There are just rules and you either abide by the rules or Bitcoin won't accept them. People like what real estate says about them. They like to say, hey, I own this house over here in Chicago. Hey, I have a bunch of storage units in Portland. It's fun for them to go to a party and talk about that. Tangibility is really a mirage because with real estate, it is just a balance sheet. It really is just on paper. The people that are investing in the real estate investors who already have other jobs like you or me or whoever, it's really only 4 to 5% if you stretch it out. Income taxes are much, much greater than capital gains taxes. If I do have to sell a Bitcoin, I'm going to be taxed down here at capital gains, but only when I sell. There's no taxes by just holding. The killer app of Bitcoin is that you can self-custody property. We've never been able to self-custody property because it could always be taken from you. It can be reappropriated. World history, global monetary systems. It's not going to want to accept anything but Bitcoin.
Hi, Terence. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Good. How are you doing? I'm glad to be back. It'll be exciting.
Absolutely. I loved our first conversations. I think last time we really talked about AI choosing Bitcoin, a little bit also about real estate and some other topics, but I think AI was a big focus. Have you any updates actually on how you look on AI before we get into real estate?
No, I just continue to believe that as AI scours and ingests all of the information of the world, world history, global monetary systems, it's not going to want to accept anything but Bitcoin. And I think that that's pretty cool because if you think about how humans are rejecting Bitcoin or not understanding Bitcoin because they don't want to do the work. Well, AI can do the work in a 30th of a second. And so you think about that, like if I could push a button on a human and say, boop, do the work, download these 20 books, all these podcasts, all this information, I'm convinced that everyone would understand Bitcoin. You put someone in a Turkish prison and you say, here's 10 Bitcoin books. They're going to come out of there and say, okay, rush me to Bitcoin as quickly as possible. So AI will do that within seconds. And so I can't really see how AI would choose anything but Bitcoin as agents, as super agents with each other, to delegate various tasks to each other because they're trying to all solve problems. They want to do it the most. AI is all about optimizing. How do I get there quicker and the most efficient way possible? Well, to me, that is Bitcoin as far as moving money, right? There's probably other tokens that can move fast, but they're not moving money. They're just moving their own token.
Yeah, they might use some internal tokens to move quick around within an ecosystem where you don't need trust or anything like that, where you don't need the security aspect of that. That's a good point. But when it comes to money storing through space and time, it's a no-brainer to choose Bitcoin.
Yeah, AI is going to sit there and say, okay, should I use Tron? And it's be like, okay, let me save Tron because I have all these tasks I need to do. Oh, wait, but what if this one AI I ask over here won't accept Tron? Well, now he's stuck. But guess what? They're all going to accept Bitcoin. So, yeah.
Interesting. I really enjoyed your talk about real estate also. And you said you do a lot of work on real estate versus Bitcoin. How have you come to that?
Yeah, so it's like, so many people have been bringing in people from traditional finance, from legacy finance, from Wall Street with the whole digital gold narrative, because oftentimes investors and traders sort of get the hedge of gold. They get that it's a commodity to help blunt some of the volatility of all of their stocks and their trading. In my life and in my world, I don't know anyone that owns gold. As you know, most millennials and Gen Zs, I think less than 2 or 3% even own gold. And most of that's because it's been handed down over generations, like a grandma or grandpa gave them some jewelry. No one wants gold that I know of and in my circles. And there's just so much friction and barriers to try to not only get actual gold, but then to sell gold and, fractionalize it and divide it. And everything we know that's wrong with something that's analog that, yes, has worked for centuries. But now that we're in a digital world, it doesn't really work. And I think that's why, for me, the narrative of digital gold has never really worked. And in my circles, and I will guess that beyond my circles, I mean, every country, every nation, and anywhere you go, everyone gets real estate because everyone has to live somewhere. Everyone would love to have their own place. The problem is that what I've noticed. Oh, so and by the way, you know how we love our Bitcoin conferences, we love our Bitcoin meetups and stuff. So take that and times it by 1,000. That's the real estate world. And I've been to all of those real estate meetups. I've been in those, like I've been this Bitcoin guy, but with the real estate hat. And I know the Kool-Aid that they're drinking. I know that the narratives that they all repeat, just like we do in Bitcoin. The problem is that a lot of them just aren't honest with themselves. Whereas Bitcoin, you have to be honest and truthful because there is no other choice, right? There are just rules and you either abide by the rules or Bitcoin won't accept them. Real estate allows you to do whatever you want. And because of that, real estate investors aren't honest. And so this is the thing that I've noticed. And this is where I now go to these meetups. I now talk to real estate groups and I say, hey, everyone raise your hand. Can we just be honest? So the first thing is, so as you know, there's like $900 trillion in our global monetary system. About a third of that is in income and investment real estate. That's a huge amount of money. And I'm not talking about if someone wants to own their own home and have the white picket fence and raise the family. I get that. I still think there's problems with that. And I still think renting is potentially better for most people. But set that aside, even if you want to own your own home. I'm talking about everyone who wants a second home, an Airbnb, a rental, 4 units here. Or they want to invest in shopping centers, storage units, office space. Everyone's like, yes, I want passive money. I want mailbox money. I want to make money while I sleep, right? Why not? That sounds like a dream. And so people get in real estate. They also are somewhat programmed and conditioned ever since they're young that like, hey, they're not making any more land, get real estate. You're always going to do well in real estate. You know, let someone else's rent pay for your mortgage. So the first thing I find when I talk to real estate bros is that they're not honest about the fact that they like the brag. They like the flex. People like what real estate says about them. They like to say, hey, I own this house over here in Chicago. Hey, I have a bunch of storage units in Portland. I have an Airbnb in Florida, right? It's fun for them to go to a party and talk about that. Okay, well, first of all, what they will admit is that, you know, one of the first rules of real estate is that you can't get emotional because if it goes up in price, you have to flip it. Right? Real estate goes in these cycles and you can't just hang on to it forever. Or if you're hanging on to it forever, you're not going to get to enjoy the Airbnb because if it's a business, it's constantly rented out. You're not going to, you know, there's nothing for you to do with the storage units or with the office space. It's really just a balance sheet. So like Bitcoin, which people complain about, they're like, oh, there's no tangibility to Bitcoin. I'm just looking at a number. Well, tangibility is really a mirage because with real estate, it is just a balance sheet. It really is just on paper. What the only tangibility is if there's like, you know, a sewer clog or a toilet backs up or, you know, the roof needs to be redone. That's the only time there's really tangibility to real estate. Other than that, it is an investment. You buy it. You can't get emotional. Ideally, you flip it. The people that make the most money in real estate, they flip it. They buy something, they fix it up, 6 to 8 weeks, they flip it. They can't get emotional. And those that hang on to it long term, if you look at their long CAGR, their compound annual growth rate, it's really this, and this is shocking, but real estate people have to be honest, it's only 4 to 5%. 4 to 5%. Now you say, well, wait a minute. I always hear about people talking about 20%, 30% in real estate. Yes, and they're talking about very brief moments in time. They're discounting the great financial crisis that we had in 2008 and 2009. They're discounting the savings and loan crisis. They're also discounting the fact that, yes, if you are a real estate developer professional, you went to school for it. This is your degree. You've got a master's in it. You're like, this is what you do for a living. This is how you mine fiat. Yes, you can potentially make some decent gains. Absolutely. You can get up there in the 20 to 30% range, but that's rare because there's so many times people lose their money because those developers really are only putting in 2 to 3% of their own money. They're going to people like you, Rob, and they're going to me. They're forming limited partnerships, these syndicates where they're only 3 to 4% of the capital stack. And then they raise all this money on top from investors to go then buy this property. Now they're going to go get a $400 million, apartment complex with, 100 doors, 100 units, and, redo the appliances in the doors and, try to flip it in 5-6 years and sell it to an institution. But the people that are investing in the real estate investors who already have other jobs like you or me or whoever, it's really only 4 to 5% if you stretch it out. So you have to first of all say to yourself, okay, are you willing to have all this friction, all this work, all this stress, all these headaches of having a tangible property just to get 4 to 5%? When, Bitcoin is doing easily over 10x that, and maybe into the future that comes down a little bit to 8 or 9x, but completely passive, completely frictionless, which, we both know. So that's the first hump I'm finding with real estate people, that if you could get them in a mode of thinking critically and being honest with themselves and say, hey, are you willing to take away the label and the flex that, hey, I'm a real estate investor, or hey, I own all these properties. If you take that away and you say to yourself, well, I really only own real estate for what it can get me, because I'm going to flip it, or I'm going to get this cash flow, or I'm going to have this money. If you're realistic about that, you really don't need real estate, right? Would you accept some other magic thing over here that gives you 10x that? And you can go to sleep at night and not be woken up in the middle of the night to toilets and trash and tenants and have your yearly taxes, even if you haven't sold it. So then they'll say to me, here's the second thing, Rob, and they'll say, well, I get cash flow. I have cash flow. And here's my response to that. Again, they have to be honest with themselves. Cash flow is just another form of appreciation. So first of all, most real estate investors don't get cash flow because they're flipping it, right? You could buy Bitcoin and you could sell Bitcoin, just like flipping it. Second, the cash flow, the people that are getting cash flow is a reward for illiquidity. You can't obviously fractionalize your real estate. I can't take off, Michael Saylor can't take off the doorknob from his front door and, go buy a coffee or a dinner with that. That degrades his real estate. You take off the doors, the windows, the walls, right? You can't do that. Bitcoin, you can. And whereas most people can't invest in real estate unless they're already privileged, already sit close to the money printer and get cheap, inexpensive loans, or are part of syndicates or accredited investors or qualified investors, because you have to have a certain amount down. It does require a certain amount of wealth to even get into real estate in the first place. Obviously, with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter because one sat will accrete and appreciate the same as a whole Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin. So if I could go over to, someone's mansion in Florida or in London and be like, wow, I can't believe your property's going up 10% this year. I wish I could, but I don't have enough money to. It's like, well, I could buy a crumb of his stucco on the outside of his wall and go up at the same time as him. So real estate investors are like, well, yeah, I like this cash flow. It's like, well, first of all, you have to put up a large amount of wealth to get the cash flow. You're not even getting back your full amount of money unless you're going to sit there for 10, 20 years. Also, you're taxed on that cash flow. That cash flow is income. And everybody knows income taxes are much, much greater than capital gains taxes. If I do have to sell a Bitcoin, I'm going to be taxed down here at capital gains, but only when I sell. There's no taxes by just holding. Real estate, they're paying yearly property taxes, right? Which is why property taxes are just a rebrand of rent, right? All there is in the world is rent. And this is another thing for real estate investors to just think critically about. Like, you are always renting. You might like what the word owning says to you rather than renting, but I either rent to a landlord if I rent, or I rent to the county in which I live if I own. Because the minute I don't pay those property taxes, you get a lien and they'll kick you out, just like a landlord. So that isn't true ownership, right? The definition of ownership is that you possess it, right? And that is, as we know, the killer app of Bitcoin. The killer app of Bitcoin is that you can self-custody property. We've never been able to self-custody property because it can always be taken from you. It can be reappropriated. And that's another thing that especially the big real estate developers won't often like to admit. It's that like, an airport can be built across the street. A county can come in with eminent domain. They could acquire it. Like they literally can say, this is the market value we're paying you because we need to expand roads. A school can be built next door. You can have noisy neighbors. Like you don't know what's going to happen. You can't pick up your real estate. You can't move it to another place. We can't cross lines drawn in sand. We're stuck. And also, it's not fungible. And every real estate investor will admit the day that they sell their property, they're like, I can't believe someone actually bought it, because every piece of property is unique. It's all different. Even if you're in a complex where there's 100 houses that look alike, they have different light, they face different places, again, different neighbors. And so you can continue to go down this list of taxes, of cash flow, of every single thing, especially for the investments, for the income, for the people that again have a property that they can't even visit or see because they're so successful renting it out. Well, Bitcoin, unless people don't like math, will literally say we can beat real estate in every single area. We can make real estate portable, divisible, permissionless, censorship-free, surveillance-free. Like it removes everything. Again, if a real estate person's honest and you say, write down in this column everything that you don't like about your real estate, all the things that you have to do, it's really foreign if you think about it. So here's the thing, like real estate investing was never supposed to be real estate investing. You know what it was meant to be? It was meant to be real estate living. We turned it into real estate investing because we're trying to hurdle inflation. We're just trying to keep up. It's a numbers game, and real estate has done a really good job because it absorbs global liquidity. But think how foreign it is that we're investing in something that deteriorates. It literally is sitting outside in the weather and in the elements, and that's our investment. And so we're having to spend all this money to continually to upgrade it. Like, honestly, if there's a brand new house that's $1 million, in 20 years, it should be $700,000. It's not new anymore. It's not as good. Bitcoin doesn't have that problem. And, your audience is probably mostly Bitcoiners, Robin. So they all know this. But real estate people, they get so conditioned and so programmed. They've taken these late night courses. They're watching these YouTube videos. How can I get this 4-unit apartment complex? I'll live in one. I'll rent at the others. That'll pay my rent. But they're taking a huge amount of risk. They have a lot of liabilities. They're having to use a lot of leverage, which can work in a bull market, but we also don't know when the down markets come. And Bitcoin does the same thing, just like real estate. We have bulls and bears, but when there's a bear in Bitcoin, you just have to sit there. You don't have to do anything. With real estate, you're still having to pay for the new roof, the new siding, the sprinklers, the landscaper. And by the way, every time a tenant leaves, there's 1 to 2 months of turnover, rekeying, new carpets, all the things we know. So, and I mean, look at COVID. Some people say, well, I don't want to have residential real estate. I want to be the big boy. I want to invest in all commercial real estate. Well, what happened to all those people that had office spaces when COVID hit? Those people are still bleeding. And a lot of those places are just sitting empty. And I don't know what the next pandemic or the next crisis will bring. What could that do that we're not thinking about, for storage unit space or shopping malls? Like I've been invested in shopping malls, a tiny percent because I'm part of like hundreds of other people because these are big, like practically $1 billion portfolios. But when COVID hit, those too, they got decimated. And now people are trying to figure out what to do with all these dated indoor shopping malls. So anyways, I've been talking probably way more than I should, and I can go into more of it. But that's kind of like the big idea when I get into these groups. And all you have to do is almost be a therapist with a real estate person and just ask them questions. Why are you really in real estate? Okay, you want the money. Great. Are you really getting cash flow? And all the time that there's problems with this real estate, cash flow stops. By the way, that's the first thing that stops. So even people that say, oh, I like the cash flow, they're not getting the cash flow that they think they are because of all the others. Because how do you pay for the expenses? From that cash flow. So you show them how Bitcoin is digital property. It's property in cyberspace. And I don't have to worry about a zip code. I don't have to go north, south, east, west. I go up. And it's scarce. It's a neighborhood with only 21 million plots. I can get one of these plots or a fraction of the plot. And unlike real estate, if someone happens to lose their Bitcoin or, it burns down, your house burns down, no one can make a new one. So now it's even that much more scarce. Now everyone else who's being responsible and hanging on to their Bitcoin, really their Bitcoin keys, then their property becomes even that much more valuable. So, it's just, to me, it's so obvious. To you, it's so obvious. You get all of this. And I know you fully get this. I've heard you talk about this as well. But the real estate people haven't stopped to think about it. They're like, I don't get it. So I think educating about Bitcoin and comparing it to real estate is a big idea, and is a big idea that I feel is way more helpful to most of the world than digital gold. I heard digital gold first and I dismissed it. You know why? I don't care about gold. I don't want gold. I know right now at the time of recording, gold is having its moment, but go over 15, 20 years, it's mostly been flat, right? It's it's been around for 5,000 years, and we're now at whatever, over $3,000. Like, Bitcoin's barely been here, and we're tapping 100K.
There are a lot of interesting points in there, man. I love it. I want to start with maybe a personal, small story. I was really close to buying real estate before I discovered Bitcoin. I discovered Bitcoin when I was 21, 22 years old. And this was right at the moment where I first got my first job for a few years. I made some money in the stock market, and I was looking for I can actually take some out to make a down payment on a real estate to get into this investing world also. It was right at that moment where I also discovered Bitcoin, and luckily I never went into real estate. And luckily I actually discovered Bitcoin. It saved me a lot of headache. It saved me a lot of clarity and focus from real estate way to Bitcoin. And now I can just have Bitcoin, and I don't if I wouldn't be a Bitcoin podcaster and I would, I don't know, have an AI podcast, for example, I wouldn't have to worry about Bitcoin at all, because I know it's there. It's okay. It's like, I don't have to look at it every day. I can in the beginning, most do. But the longer you have it, you don't have to look at it. And this really saved a lot of my life energy, actually, to not go and fix toilets and or hire someone that fix toilets and do all those things. It's a lot of headache that I got saved from, and hopefully a lot of other people also got saved from. And I heard out that you have been investing in real estate a lot. Do you invest in real estate? Are you completely out now? Or did you get out of real estate and now fully in Bitcoin?
I'm not fully out, and this again is another problem. I can't get out because some of the big projects that I got into, like for instance, I own a bunch of leases for CVS and Walgreens's. So there's these big buildings where these what do you call them? Consumer stores, right? Where you pick up toothpaste and cereal and whatnot. And they have pharmacies. I'm invested in those in what's called syndicates, right? Where there is a sponsor who found it. But then I'm part of the stack of all of the investors that came in to invest in it. I can't get out of those until they decide to sell. Until they sell, I could be in some of those for the next 20 years. I can't get out of those. Now, ones that I personally went into, I have fully gotten out in. I had all these Airbnbs. I had one in Joshua Tree. I had one in Nashville. I had one in Palm Springs. I had one in Austin. I was picking all the cool neighborhoods and all these places. And guess what? They were constantly booked, always rented out. Amazing. But guess what? That was my second job. That was a job. And when things went well, man, those checks looked so good. Wow, these checks are just flying in, right? People going to Coachella in Palm Springs. It's like, this was amazing. But then, in the middle of the night, it's like, oh, the heater for the pool isn't working. The toilet's clogged. The air conditioner's not working, and it's 120 degrees out here. It's like, and I'm now jumping in the car and driving 3 hours out to the desert to solve a problem. It's like suddenly I bought myself another job, because those properties didn't just come to me magically. I had to buy them. I had to put up a significant amount of capital just to get those in the first place. So once I graduated beyond just single family homes and renting them out and or flipping, I've also flipped about a dozen homes personally myself, where I bought the house, I fixed it, I worked on it and sold it, boom. And I did that every year to 2 years. It's like sell, 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 sell. I executive produced and show ran this TV show on TV called Fix My Flip, right? And so it's like I'm very much into flipping houses, and I was doing all of that. But if I was honest with myself, I didn't care about the house. I would find the ugliest thing, and I didn't care what it looked like afterwards. It's just get it. It almost feels like a meme token in a way. It's like I'm getting it. I know I have to get rid of it as quickly as possible, because it's like because the longer I hang on to it, I'm servicing all that debt. I'm servicing the mortgage and the investor's money who I took to be able to get the house in the first place. So anyways, I graduated to all of these syndicates in these bigger commercial properties where it would be like 300 unit apartment complex, 600 unit apartment complex, all these garden style places. And whenever those exited, between, I want to say like 2019, 2020, and now, I would start moving that into Bitcoin. But some of those I'm still stuck in. And you know what? The few that I'm stuck in now are all now losing money. The cash flow has stopped. I mean, some of them for 2 years, no cash flow. Sorry, dear investors, we had to stop cash flow, due to the economy, due to COVID, due to this. So me getting into those in the first place for cash flow, none. My down payment on many of these, which could be anywhere from like $25,000 to $100,000, is held hostage. I don't have access to that, and in Bitcoin terms, I'm just losing. I'm not growing my purchasing power at all in those. So at this point, I hope to maybe just get back my principal. By the way, one or two of them, I know I'm only going to get half of my principal back. I just spoke to the owners of one in Texas, and they're like, sorry, you're going to get about half back. We're going to have to sell it at a loss. Because the interest rates are now adjusting. A lot of these commercial properties do really well, and what they're trying to do is they try to get into, like, say, 100-unit apartment complex, and their plan is to flip it in 5 years. They want to sell it to Vanguard. They want to sell it to BlackRock. Those are the biggest buyers. But so they'll get these 5-year ARMs, meaning low interest rates for 5 years. So we would have these like 2-3% interest rates. But now that they've adjusted, and as we know, interest rates are high, and now they adjust up to 7, 8, 9, they can't afford it. We can't afford it. So we sell it at a loss to someone else who will benefit by getting it way less than us, and we get half our capital back. So I've lost money on a lot of these. Some of them I've done okay, but when I add it all up together, and some that looked like I killed it, I'm a genius, and then these other losses, and then you spread out this long time frame, it's like you're talking 4 to 5%. It's crazy. And I think that's why the theme of this talk today is that real estate investors need to be honest with themselves. And this is what Bitcoin sort of helps us reveal in the fiat world. It helps reveal the way things really are. So yeah, so I'm unfortunately still stuck in some of these things. So I'm still technically a real estate investor, even though I don't want to be at all. I want to just be a Bitcoin saver.
I think this realization that real estate is not investing, but it is a business. So you basically, you said you buy, I love that term, buying a job. So like you're buying yourself a job when you do real estate. I think that realization a lot of people haven't had. It's probably also in America very popular, but in Austria, it's extremely popular to take your own home. So you live somewhere rural, you buy a house, you live in it, you pay your mortgage for like 30 years, and this is your retirement plan. This is your pension. This is how I would say the mid-range of Austrians, not the rich, not the poor, like the mid-range, is looking at their pension in Austria, like 80% of people. It's so hard to argue against that. I mean, it's easy logically, but really hard emotionally, because they put their whole life already towards that. They're already living there. They have the finances, like they're betting their whole life on that. And sometimes I sit there with them, and it's almost hard for me emotionally to say like, oh, like, yeah, that was a huge,
Yeah.
I cannot say that. Like, that's really hard.
They're also stuck there, right? Like if they want to move, they're so planted, they're so rooted there. It's such an investment. And if it's a retirement, that it's like, what if they want to move or get closer to grandchildren or, closer to a hospital because they need it when they're older?
How did you realize? So you were in the conferences, you were really close to the real estate economy. How did you all of a sudden realize, oh, like that's that's BS. I have to get out of there.
So, I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll say it because I don't care. Because now I'm a Bitcoiner. But it was when I was doing several real estate TV shows. I've sold real estate TV shows. I've produced real estate TV shows. And let's just say the numbers aren't always 100% real. And that's because we're making a TV show. And those shows want to encourage people to invest in real estate. They want to show people that you can be a weekend warrior. You can go flip that house. Anyone can make it happen, but you have to learn how to hammer and tile and do all this. And I get that. Me personally, I like doing some of that stuff, which is fine. The point is that you don't have to do that if you don't want to, because we have Bitcoin. But to make the shows interesting, we would buy the house and we would add up all the numbers of everything that was done by the contractors and the stars of the show, and then we'd sell the house. But when you minused all of the capital debt, the debt servicing, when you minused the taxes, when you minus the time it really took us to buy a house and sell a house, which was often a lot longer than we said on television, they weren't making that much money. And it was just, so there was that. The second thing that made me realize it is that when I became a Bitcoiner, I learned what inflation really is. I didn't really know. We all think we know what inflation is, but I didn't know. And I realized, there's this amazing meme. I don't know if your editors can put it up while we're talking, but if not, I'll describe it. But there's this amazing meme where it's tight on this little kid, and he's dunking a basket into the basket, right? And he's called, real estate, right? Hey, we think we're really good at real estate. He's dunking it. But then you back up, and his dad is holding him up to the basket, putting it in. The dad is inflation. And that's really what I realized, is that anytime and every time I thought, or I was witnessing people kill it in real estate, it was because of inflation. There was a lot of money printing coming into the system, a lot of dollars. And how do those dollars come in? Well, we know that there's several ways that the government money prints, or the central bank money prints, I should say. But one of the biggest ways is lowering interest rates. It's credit. Credit creation creates dollars. Those dollars didn't exist. And so the people that stick, yes, you know it. This is perfect. And so I was always zoomed in on that kid with the basketball, and that was me. And when I found Bitcoin, someone pulled out, they zoomed out to a wide, and I was like, holy crap. This is what has been happening the whole time. And this just blew my mind. And now here's the funny thing. Some people will say, oh, well, that's just Bitcoin. And I'd say, okay, great. Let's say you are right and that is Bitcoin. Awesome. But now I don't have to do anything. I just save in Bitcoin. That's it. I'm not having to throw a basketball into a basket. I buy the Bitcoin, I save in it, and I just sit there. So that was a huge revelation to me. And that's why I recently made a video on inflation, which is so basic to us Bitcoiners now, but it's like people don't really know what inflation is. So I said, I got to get out of this as soon as possible and get it into Bitcoin, because the longer it takes, the more that I am leaving on the table in appreciation. And so I have been trying to get out of real estate as fast as I can. And I did, of everything I could. I have sold everything that I can sell individually, or if I had one or two partners. But now the things that I'm in with hundreds of people, I just write it off to that was me. That was past me, right? I unplugged from that and I've moved to the new, better world. And I still have some property in the old world, but it's imperfect property. Now I have incorruptible, impenetrable property.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have two ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin way. The Bitcoin way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your sovereignty. They will personalize for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Prague, and very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward seeing you there. It's so unfortunate that I cannot put that site up because I think the provider just like stopped putting that site up. Do you know Priced in Bitcoin 21? The website?
Oh, are you talking about real estate?
No. There's a site. It was one of my favorite sites in Bitcoin. It was called Priced in Bitcoin 21, and for some reason it's not reachable for a few weeks now. And I brought it up so many times in the show because you see all of things priced in Bitcoin. So you can see oranges priced in Bitcoin. You can see the stock market priced in Bitcoin, and basically it flips the script of you pricing everything in Bitcoin, and then you see the true price of what where real estate, where the stock market actually is going. If you use Bitcoin as the anchor, everything is going down. And this was this amazing chart of seeing like 5 years ago, average home in the US was, let's say 30 Bitcoin. And now it's like 5 Bitcoin. And this price is just sinking and sinking and sinking. And it really opens the eyes of like, oh yeah, real estate is going up, but because of inflation. If you put it in gold or in Bitcoin or in anything hard, Bitcoin is the most extreme, of course, because it's the best money. If you put it in that, the real estate market is crashing. What was it? 98.5% or something like that in the last 5 years. And this is actually what I usually show the people that hold real estate. Are you sure you're making money? Are you sure your real estate is going up?
Well, when I tell people this blows them away. So my house right now that I'm sitting in, I paid 1,818 Bitcoin in 2014. Now, I didn't pay it in Bitcoin because I wasn't a Bitcoiner yet in 2014. I paid it in US dollars. But in hindsight, it cost 1,818 Bitcoin. Today, it's worth about 17, 18 Bitcoin. That's all, 17 or 18 Bitcoin. And I know in 4 or 5 years, it's probably going to be worth about 1 or 2. So that, like when when you think about that, that just makes you want to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible because everything's going to get cheaper and cheaper. Now, some people would say, because I do own my home, I've just hung on to it, and they're probably right that I should sell this house immediately. I can probably rent a similar house for much less, and I should take those 16, 17, 18 Bitcoin right now because that would be incredible. That would be amazing to have that much Bitcoin and, go rent something because I could probably buy back this place in 4 or 5 years for a couple of Bitcoin and I'd have the difference. So yeah, viewing the world, viewing anything you purchase, any goods or services that you need, viewing it against a fixed tool, a fixed measurement tool will always make it go down. And it is just so weird, right? You know this, that we measure everything with fixed numbers, whether it's weight or temperature or a ruler. Why don't we do that with our money? It just keeps growing. So we can't coordinate. We can't communicate properly. And speaking of real estate, that's another area that sometimes the people that are really, really resistant and they will counter everything that I've already told you, I will just say, pretend you're building a house and pretend that measuring tape just keeps growing. So the lumber that you've ordered, you suddenly need more by the time you start building. The cement you've ordered, you suddenly need more. You said, I need 30 pounds of this, but now you need 40. Now you need 50. This is what happens to our money, right? The value of your house hasn't gone up. We still have the 4 bedrooms, the 3 baths. What has changed? Nothing. In fact, it's deteriorated. So why is it requiring more dollars? Well, because every dollar is worth less. That, by the way, is obvious to us Bitcoiners again, but real estate people have never thought about that. And I've several times said that to some very well-known real estate people, and they say, whoa, 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 say that one more time. I'm like, you need more dollars for your house many years later because each dollar is worth less, so it requires more. And they're just like, oh my God. Like they feel like they've been psyoped their whole life. And I'm like, yeah, it's so simple as a Bitcoiner. But before you find Bitcoin, there's no way that, you want to be the hero of your life. You want to be the hero of your own story. And this is a big thing that real estate people like. They want to be the hero and they can be the hero. I found this house. I did this. I'm now flipping it. I found these tenants. Ha ha ha. Look at me. I'm responsible. I'm smart. But you don't need to do any of that. And it's not necessarily smart. And it would be nice if the ultimate effect of all of this is to reduce the price of some real estate for people that actually just need a place to live, that actually just want a home for their family, because we're not putting a monetary premium on it, because we're not driving prices up, because we're not treating homes and real estate as piggy banks. That would be amazing. That would be incredible. But so here's something that I think is important probably for your listeners. So a lot of Bitcoiners are saving for real estate. Here's the irony, right? We just bagged on real estate, but a lot of Bitcoiners like, I want my Bitcoin to grow so I can buy real estate. And I totally get that. I do think there is some value in owning a home, but here's what I will say. There's no difference between renting and owning if you're willing to accept that your security deposit is the insurance for that. Meaning, you can go rent and live wherever you want. And of course, you have the freedom to move whenever you want, which is really nice. And of course, your landlord's going to pay for all of the maintenance, all the upkeep, all that, and all the taxes. So it's really nice. You could live where you want, pay the rent. You have to put down a security deposit. Well, the security deposit just covers the fact that if you leave and you've done something the landlord doesn't like, he takes from your security deposit, and he can't take more than your security deposit. That's what he takes. So a lot of people are like, well, I want to buy because I want to change the countertops. I want to put wallpaper on the walls. I want a different sink. So this is why I first got into real estate, by the way. I was renting and I was fixing up my rentals. I changed out the sinks. I changed out the toilets. I put in hardwood floors in one of my rentals. I literally knocked down a wall. Now, I always went to the landlord first. And if they were resistant, I said, look, I'm going to pay for everything. I'm still going to pay my rent. I just want to live in a better place. And they would see it afterwards and they were like blown away because I just improved their property for them. Life is short. We want our surroundings to be nice. And so, why delay doing something? Because you're like, well, I'm renting this place. I would really love to have, I'd really love to have a different front door, but um, I'm renting. Why would I do that? Half of the time you can go to your landlord. So I've had tenants come to me when I used to have all kinds of rentals and say, hey, we want to put a cement wall up. We want to put cement over the wall. And I'd be like, great, I'll even reduce your rent. Or someone has wanted to change the flooring. I'm saying, great, as long as you pay for it, hire a contractor who's insured and bonded, I'll reduce your rent by that exact amount because they're improving my property. And I think a lot of renters don't think that way. They think it's temporary. They think they're in a hotel. And it's like, and I lived in a hotel, by the way, for several years, or kind of adjacent to a hotel. And I completely renovated that whole place. And all my friends were like, what are you doing? You're renting this place. I can't believe. I'm like, yeah, but I live here. Life is short. I want to enjoy my surroundings while I'm here. And I made my place look so nice. And the landlord loved it. Absolutely loved it. So that's just something to think about if people are like, I even saw some Bitcoiner post the other day. They're like, oh yeah, I want to buy a house because, I don't know. There was a certain type of built-in cabinets that she wanted. She's like, I want to have these. Oh yeah, I want to have these built-in book cabinets right next to my bed so I can have my bed and buy my books. And I DM'd her and I was like, build it, put it on the wall. You can take it off when you leave, but I guarantee you the landlord will probably come in and look at it and go, that's pretty freaking great. Thank you. And if not, the insurance, the fee is your security deposit. Let them get upset and say, great, I'm going to take my $2,000, my $3,000. It's that $2,000, $3,000 is way less than you going in and buying a home and paying the taxes and all the maintenance and everything. So that's just something that I think is also helpful, that again, you have to get past the mental model that I have to own. That buying a home is the American dream, which, by the way, is a slogan of a real estate company. A real estate company invented homes being the American dream. Now, I get it. You want to raise a family, you want your own home, great. Buy your own home. But you will buy that as long as you admit that everything isn't about money, and maybe everything isn't about money. If you're okay, Bitcoin is going to go up faster than your house. Full stop. It will 100% go up faster than your house. So if you want to buy a house, that's great. So like Natalie Brunell, who we all know, for example, she wants to buy a house. I think she probably now has enough Bitcoin to convert into a house. But I've heard her say recently, she's like, I think Bitcoin's going to be going up so much faster than if I get a house. So I'm going to keep renting for a while. I'm going to hang in there because Bitcoin is just going up so fast. And it may not work for her, but she can go rent anything she wants. Anyone can go rent. Everything is for rent. So it's just something to think about. What's the cost of being able to tell someone, I own my house? That's pretty expensive. You know how many people have gone bankrupt over that narrative? I own my house. You can say I rent my house. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
People confuse financial stability with owning a home. There's like some sort of sense, oh, you own your own home, so this means you have to be good financially. So there's this like weird BS narrative around that.
You nailed it. That's it. That's the realization. We have to admit what it is. Ever since I was a little kid, like I hear my dad, I hear my uncles, you hear people talking like, oh, well, he owns. Oh, wow. Do you own? Like, I was just at a wedding, like, oh, this couple got married. Hey, when are you guys going to, buy your own home? And it's like, stop putting that in their head. They don't need to buy. They don't need to go into debt this young. And, anyways, we get it.
How did you, I'm just curious, how did you live in a hotel? How long did you do that?
Well, it wasn't actually a hotel, but it was right next to the hotel was this little set of like bungalows, these little apartment complexes. But I liked to take meetings in the lobby. This was back when I was in Hollywood, and I would take all my meetings and read all my scripts by the pool and got to do all that. But it was the same landlord. That's the only reason why I called it hotel. He was an owner in the hotel, and he owned this complex. And so the first time, by the way, just getting back to what we just talked about, I didn't even ask him because I was afraid, but I ripped out all the carpet on my own because I noticed there were really nice hardwood floors, and I threw it out by the trash. And I just thought, screw it, he can take my security deposit. But he saw the carpet, and he came up to the door knocking, and I was really nervous, and he opened the door. And I think he was going to be upset, but he saw the wood I mean, I had them sanded and polished. I mean, they were beautiful. And he said, "Thank you. This is beautiful." So, and that's when it started to click. I was like, renting or owning, it's the same thing. It's just a different definition of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there were no property taxes, I might get the difference, right? Like that makes a big difference. But it's like people can buy a house without any leverage, no mortgage. Just here's all my cash. Here's all my Bitcoin or all my cash. Here's my house. But now you're paying yearly. I mean, and it's a lot here where I live. It's 1.5%. So you buy $1 billion house, you're paying $15,000 a year. That doesn't go anywhere. Doesn't do anything. That's crazy. And that's without the maintenance.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, Austria is such a small country, but I think that can happen everywhere. The government is slowly figuring out that they have to save. They're slowly figuring out, oh shit, we spend too much money. The deficits are way bigger than we expected. It's becoming a meme in Austria. We just got a new government, and the last 3 months, there is coming out a new number, what the deficit for 2025 will be. And the number keep doubling every month or something like that. It's ridiculous, how this goes. But basically,
wow.
What I wanted to get to is they are getting towards, okay, we have to not only save, we also have to get new income. And the only thing they always kind of get to is real estate, because those are the only people that can not really get out of Austria. Like, you cannot move a house in Vienna to Budapest. You can sell the house in Vienna and then buy one in Budapest. Companies can leave. There's an exit tax, but if you increase the taxes on a company too high, they rather pay the exit tax and then move to another country. Bitcoin, they don't even know where it is, because it's not in any particular country. Stocks you can tax better because it's like in a brokerage, so like you cannot get it out that quickly. So what are they taxing? Real estate. Almost everyone owns them. It's a huge source of income. If they just pump up the tax of like 0.5%, it's a huge income for them. Most people will just buy them. Someone that has a real estate property, they will not sell it just because they raised it 0.5%, but it will hurt him a lot financially. So this is I think something real estate people also don't realize, how easy it is to tax them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they get scared because they live there and the government can put a lien on it, and they can start collecting and they can have a judgment. And, there's all the liability. I mean, someone can trip on your property. They can fall in your swimming pool, and suddenly you have a lawsuit, that no one can trip on my Bitcoin.
I love that. We talked about why renting is better than owning a home, and I'm 100% there with you. Is there a time in the Bitcoin adoption where you say, oh, now it actually makes sense if it's a small enough amount of your Bitcoin to own your own home again? So let's say Bitcoin adoption is we are currently at like 3%. I think we're more like at 0.5%. Let's say we had 50, 60% of Bitcoin adoption. We had like 10, $20 million. It's going really good. Is there a point where you say, oh no, like now we are at the maturity level of Bitcoin adoption where maybe it makes sense to, if you have the Bitcoin Cash and you can buy with 10% of your Bitcoin portfolio, a home that you really like, is there a point where it makes sense again to invest in something else?
Yeah, I think, with the caveat that if people are willing, again, to admit that it will not be as good an investment as Bitcoin, whatever real estate you get, full stop, that you will lose in purchasing power against Bitcoin. If you're willing to admit that, and if you find a unique enough property that it happens to be in a place where you don't want to move for 5 or 10 years, because that is the one thing that ownership would do, is like, if you rent, a landlord could force you out. He sells the property, you have to move. So if for some reason it's unique enough that you're like, look, I really cannot live anywhere else in the world, I have to live here. Like maybe it is a farm or it is a land and you're part of a business or something, then I get it. And then I would say, yeah, that could make sense for you to buy it. I also believe that, to your question, and this is right around the corner, perhaps even later this year, that as soon as we can have Bitcoin mortgages, I think that'll be a game changer, meaning a way to not have to sell your Bitcoin. Let your Bitcoin continue to grow, but take a loan off of your Bitcoin enough for a down payment on the house. So again, you're going to have more expenses because now you're in the fiat world and you're leveraging, and there is risk. So you have to make sure you have enough Bitcoin that you can just have a small amount, because you don't want to have a capital call. You don't want to have to add more or be liquidated. But, for easy numbers, if you have 10 Bitcoin and you're getting a house for 1 Bitcoin, yeah, that could make sense, because you're not having to sell all of your Bitcoin. You're just getting a Bitcoin loan based on the amount you have. And the small amount of Bitcoin you probably would have to sell is for your down payment if you lived on a Bitcoin standard. If you still had a fiat job and you were saving some fiat, then sure, that could be your down payment. And then you don't have to sell any Bitcoin. None at all, because you just get, who wouldn't loan, because there are some investors in some companies that still are fiat minded and they want fixed income. So just like all mortgages come from fixed income investments. But why, if I'm a fixed income investor and I want to make money off of someone else's mortgage, why not do it on Bitcoin? That's perfect, collateral, versus a house that I have to appraise, and there, I have to worry about if my investment's going to be safe with that. But here I can just digitally check an address. Here's the 10 Bitcoin this person put up. Great. Here's, the $200,000 they need for the house. Pay us back the $200,000 or not, because we have your 10 Bitcoin. So there's that kind of thing. And with a multi-signature that makes it safe for everybody. So, if I'm a Bitcoiner and I want to borrow off of my Bitcoin but not sell any, I want to know that I'm holding a key. The lender can have a key, and then a third party escrow, attorney, agent, someone has a key, some kind of system where I know that no one can take my Bitcoin. And as long as I pay off the loan, I get my Bitcoin back. And if I don't, I have my house. So I do think it would make sense. And I think those are coming. I know those are coming. Yeah, they're coming. A lot of these things are going to happen, because if you don't have to sell Bitcoin, then sure, you can go enjoy your life and do what you want. It's selling the Bitcoin that I think is tough. And there's nothing. And by the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with spending Bitcoin. I mean, that's the whole point of it. But I would hate to have 10 Bitcoin and spend 6 on a house, and now I'm stuck with 4. And now I have 6 on a house, and there's just so much risk and liability in that, I think.
Yeah, it's a super controversial topic, because at the one point it's like you don't want to sell your Bitcoin, but also for example, I operate on the 100%, like almost 100% Bitcoin standard. I still have to use fiat where I have to. So most of my income is already in Bitcoin. I pay one of my members already in Bitcoin. Maybe soon all of them, as they watch more and more of the podcast, they probably will also demand a Bitcoin payment at some point. So I have like 2 cash flows. The one cash flow is fiat in, fiat out. And the other one is Bitcoin in, Bitcoin out. And actually the Bitcoin in, Bitcoin out is growing. And I also didn't use a Bitcoin exchange for like half a year now, something like that, because it nicely balances itself.
Nice.
With the bank's expenses. But it really made me realize that Bitcoin is money and we should use it. There's nothing wrong with spending your Bitcoin if you have only Bitcoin. Like you have to live.
Oh, absolutely agree. Yes.
You have to do something. The only thing is, try to spend less than you make. Like make more satoshis each month than you spend, and then you have a plus. That this is saving. Like that, you're using Bitcoin as it is intended to use. But Bitcoin is not this weird thing where you pay all your years in, and then you die with the biggest stack ever.
Yeah, the whole point of Bitcoin is that we can increase our purchasing power, that we have more spending ability in the future. And so I think the narrative of never sell your Bitcoin is good. I've said that, but that is mostly, I think, and it should be, if not, directed at the people that aren't 100% there yet. They're putting 5% in Bitcoin. They're putting 2% in Bitcoin. Yes, for them, never ever sell your Bitcoin. It'll help you so much. For us, because I'm just like you, I live mostly on a Bitcoin standard. I spend my Bitcoin all the time. I pay my bills in Bitcoin. I pay my dinners in Bitcoin. I have debit cards and stuff that merchants don't even have to know. I agree, and I want to encourage people. And when I can, and it's, especially for gifts or whatever, I love to give 12 words to people. I like to get that curiosity going. Like, what is this? That's Bitcoin. What? How is it Bitcoin? Well, let's figure it out. You might have to download a wallet and punch them in, and there's some money. And so I think, yes, right. If you break it down to its most basic fundamentals, Bitcoin is for us to hold, send, and receive. That's it. So the sending and the receiving part we have to keep in mind, because a lot of people are holding, but you also have the send and receive part.
You have been in the real estate community and in the Bitcoin community. And one thing I just noted that down. You said real estate people like to flex, like, oh, I have that home. This is my home, and I own those 5 properties and stuff like that. They brag with that. Oh, I have like 200 real estate properties in like 5 different countries. In Bitcoin, it's very different, where if you say how many Bitcoin you have, you really get called out by the community of like, oh, like, don't say that, you make yourself vulnerable. And like, it's a very different community around that.
Good point.
Are there other differences that you've noticed from the real estate community and Bitcoin community? And what I'm really interested in is there something we could learn from the real estate community that the Bitcoin community might not be as good in, like what we could improve community-wise?
That's a great question. I never thought about that. Thinking in reverse, what could Bitcoiners learn from real estate people? Well, let me think about that. Let me come back to that. I'll respond to the first part that you said. You made me realize that, when switching from real estate into Bitcoin, you learn really what's important. You learn the reason we save. We learn that money is just the tool to get us what we need, right? So you don't need to care about the real estate. And you learn about living your life with more fulfillment in that we minimize our possessions. We don't need to be cluttered with lots of assets and owning lots of things. Anytime you buy something, and especially real estate, and real estate's one thing, but then you have to fill the real estate with stuff. You have to fill it with furniture and all this stuff. And, you're eventually having a flea market, garage market. You're hauling stuff to the storage unit. You're selling it on eBay. It's like, possessions possess. And Bitcoin teaches you that you can possess what's important, your time and energy, but without the possession, without the actual thing. And so I think, like, for me, I learned, and I think a lot of Bitcoiners probably have learned, coming from wherever they came from and saving in Bitcoin, you can just minimize the distractions and the noise and focus on what's important. Now, let me think about the opposite. What could a Bitcoiner learn from real estate people? I mean, real estate people in general can see the potential and promise of something early on. They're really good at saying, I know you have potential. I know you can be worth something. I know you can be valuable in the future, and I'm going to invest in you. And maybe with where Bitcoin is going, and as Bitcoiners start to become more philanthropic and want to invest and build in businesses, not contrary to what Keynesian economists and the mainstream media say, Bitcoiners do not want to just hoard their Bitcoin. As it appreciates and grows, they want to spend their Bitcoin. And I think many of them will invest in things that they care about. And that maybe is something that we can learn from real estate people, is that they are willing to roll up their sleeves and say, I can see that this is a diamond in the rough. I know this house has good bones. It just needs some paint and a nice roof, and it'll be good to go. And maybe some people that come into Bitcoin want their wallet to work perfectly, and they want, the mempool to be perfect, and they want the mining to be perfect. And it's like, we still have some things to work out. We have some kinks. Like, everything functions fine. Everyone is safe. But there are ways that things can be smoother for the user experience. And maybe the takeaway is that these things will improve. They will get better.
Yeah, I think we're really good in the back end and trying to make something work, but there are a lot of apps, a lot of things in Bitcoin where I just hope that we get better in the UX and the UI of things.
Yes.
A lot of designing. We have to make Bitcoin so good that people use it, even though they disagree with Bitcoin, because it's so nice to use. How many people are on Twitter and hate on Twitter every single day, but they use it every single day because
That's
it's
right.
so good to use. Bitcoin apps have to be so freaking good that people just love to use it. They love to spend the Bitcoin with the Bitcoin apps because it's such a great feeling. It's such a great experience on the app. So I think that's it gets better. Like, if you think about how complicated it was to buy Bitcoin 10 years ago, how complicated it was 5 years ago, and how complicated it is now to buy Bitcoin and spend Bitcoin and all those things. Like, it gets really exponentially better, but we have a long way to go, especially with spending and the medium of exchange side of things.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin needs to get so good that, unfortunately, your podcast goes away. Like, we no longer need to be educating, right? And it's almost like the internet. I feel like we went backwards in time. Like, we're doing dial-up and all this stuff. And it's like, no one thinks about how the internet works anymore because it's just beautiful.
I said that, sometimes already in the podcast, this was one of the reasons why I went away from the Bitcoin path. The first, and probably nobody knows that listens here, but the first like 5 or 10 episodes were called the Bitcoin path. And then I was like, but I think Bitcoin will be boring at some point. So, and I want to make this podcast a lifelong journey of me learning from great people. So why I just name it the one constant that will always be true in the podcast, like me.
Right.
I will always
like Peter McCormick, right?
Yeah, exactly. He went now in the same direction. And I think it's great that he did that. It's like really awesome to see. And I was having that realization after like 5-10 episodes, like, no, like it should just be Robin Seyr. I don't want to make a show out of it, sell it, or like make investors. Like, I even got offers. Like, it's just my way of learning about the world and having a platform so other people can learn with me together. Now I'm solely focusing on Bitcoin. So maybe now it would be better for me if I call it something with Bitcoin. But maybe in 5-10 years, it's a whole different topic and I'm really obsessed with a new topic. Then I have to rebrand and rename it. I guess it's possible. Peter McCormick shows that it's possible. But this was the reason why I went with like just my name. Like, that's the only constant that you can expect.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I was talking to some other Bitcoiners at a meetup the other day, and it was like, do you think about what we're all doing? Like, where we know Bitcoin is going, we're not going to be having these conferences anymore. We're not going to be having all these podcasts. We're not going to be like, because it's like, when's the last time you watched? When's the last time you went to the internet conference? Or watched an internet podcast? I don't even think it exists, but I'm sure those existed way back when. I don't know. Well, podcasts didn't exist, but you know what I mean. Conferences probably.
That's also interesting because internet conferences are no longer there, like pure internet conferences, but there's like consumer products. I forgot how there's right. Like really popular, really big ones that are around the internet, that use the internet. So maybe also, and I don't know if this will be the same case with Bitcoin, but maybe there's like conferences that use Bitcoin, not just as money, obviously, but somehow the technology of it. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of things built on top of Bitcoin that are not money related. But there could be like conferences or like niche things that like sprinkle out of Bitcoin, but are not directly Bitcoin. and maybe we just move to citadels, or the whole world is a citadel.
It's the things we don't know about, right? Like when the internet came out, no one thought it would become a theater. No one thought it would become a dating app, or a flea market, but it just did. So it's like we just don't know, what's going to be built.
You mentioned also cash flow. It's a really interesting one, because I think a lot of Bitcoiners also crave cash flow from their Bitcoin holdings. How do you look at cash flow opportunities in Bitcoin, like investing in mining, investing in different investment? How is that one called, the MSTY or something like that? Not even available in Europe, so I did not check it out yet. But there are different things where you can potentially generate some sort of income with, of course, additional risk.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of derivatives and synthetic products that are coming out, and people are trying to get fancy and do things with Bitcoin. And for many sophisticated people and people that want to take the risk, they can do that. Even the developers and platforms for any of these products, they'll tell you all of this is much more risky than just simply holding Bitcoin, because you can swing in either way. But as far as cash flow, all I would say is, you have cash flow with Bitcoin in that you can sell tiny fractions of Bitcoin. That is your cash flow, because the appreciation rate of Bitcoin is so great that as it goes up, you can take a slice here, take a slice and take it when you need it, not when you don't need it, versus cash flow of real estate. And again, it's a capital gains on Bitcoin, not income tax as it is in real estate. So I like to tell people, like I was saying earlier, that it's just a different form of appreciation, and that there really is no cash flow. Like even with the cash flow, your cash flow, like what does cash flow mean? It's like I don't have enough money, so I need cash right now to pay my bills, but yet you had enough money to buy the real estate in the first place to then just be getting fractions back. It's really weird to me, so in a sense, if you're doing the same with Bitcoin, you can just sell off tiny pieces if you need cash flow. I don't know if that really answered your question, but the problem is that I am not a Wall Street guy. I don't trade. I don't own Microsoft or any of these things. I think it's great. Some people have figured it out, but I also feel like a lot of those people might get wrecked. I don't know if they know what they're doing. I wouldn't know what to do, to be honest. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
Also, no Bitcoin mining.
Well, so obviously I love Bitcoin miners. I love what they do. I support them. But if you're talking about investing in a stock, like for the dividends of a miner, to me, that's just really risky. I think if you can mine, fantastic. I wish I could mine, but I can't find cheap or discarded or wasted electricity over here. And so for me to plug into my wall, there's no way. I run a node, which I think is great. And I think I do solo mine, but I don't consider that mining. And that's great just to help decentralize, but it's such a small amount of hash rate that I don't think I even add to anything.
That's especially with Ocean and like Lightning payouts, they really made some cool things there. Really cool. I have one question that I asked each and every one of my guests, and I think I introduced that after our last show, so probably something new for you. The question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Boy, I don't remember you asking me that question the first time we did a podcast. This is the same question you always ask?
Yes, but I introduced that question, I think, afterwards. So I think I did not ask it the last time when you were around. So I introduced it somewhere along the last, 200 episodes or something like that.
So what can you learn from me besides Bitcoin? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically my try, and then I explain the intentions quickly because I think sometimes I put that question in because we are talking with Bitcoiners around Bitcoin, and with the same intention that I mentioned before, why I did the Robin Seyr and not the Bitcoin path naming. I think at some point Bitcoin will be boring. And that's why I'm so interested in what else are Bitcoiners passionate about? What else are they really investigating, learning about, doing, whatever it is. Some people say about family, some people say like some sports, or some people say some random topic that they are currently really going deep. And so I just want to get one aspect outside of Bitcoin in.
Well, I mean, the low hanging fruit for me is content. It's story. It's movies. It's videos. I've made a lot of movies. I've made a lot of TV shows, and as I've migrated out of that into Bitcoin, I've brought a lot of the skills of writing and storytelling. And even though in movies and TVs, I never had to touch an editing machine, I had people for all of that. I was, the producer. I now am enjoying actually doing all the things that I never learned to do. But now we're in a world where everything's much more accessible. We're in a very internet connected economy, and it's just very easy to reach an audience. It's very easy to educate. It's very easy to make people laugh, whatever you want to do. So even with AI, no matter how big AI gets and whatnot, content will always be king. Story will always be important. People's personal stories are important, whether they want to write books, whether they want to make videos, whether they want to make an independent movie, whatever. I have a ton of experience in those areas, and those areas that I'm passionate about. I write every morning. I make a new video every 2 weeks. I'm still developing several screenplays. I'm still co-developing a movie company to do a bunch more films. Like, I haven't said no to Hollywood. I've said no to the centralization and KYC aspect, so to speak, of Hollywood, where now I just want to do things on my own terms. So, if I can raise money and meet the right investors that are aligned with those values, I'm ready to jump back in and, go make another 20 movies.
I love that. Yeah. I think on the last podcast, and maybe I should quickly pull it up, because I think last time we talked a lot about the movie side of things and storytelling and Bitcoin. Let me just quickly pull it up. I think that just for
I don't think too much was similar, but maybe.
No, it was a very different podcast, I think, actually.
Yeah.
So we shared different things. So if you just type in Terence Michael and Robin Seyr, it's literally the first thing that pops up. So if you want to hear more about the both of us, there you go. There's another hour.
Perfect.
And we really dove deep into storytelling, I think, in Bitcoin, if I remember correctly. It was almost a year ago, but something like that I remember, yeah. As you know, this is, I remember, I did definitely last time our end routine where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. So the previous guest asked you the question, what would be your one thing that would make you turn away from Bitcoin?
Oh, wow. What would be the one thing that would make me turn away from Bitcoin? Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if this is an acceptable answer, but because Bitcoin is a rules-based protocol, I don't even have the imagination to see what is even possible to change, because I would have to accept those changes with my node. And if I choose not to accept them, there are no changes. So I'll use that as my answer, that, we can't change Bitcoin. It can only change us. And so I don't know what could change. Maybe I'm too limited in my thinking, but, I think that is the big idea of Bitcoin, is that it can't change in that respect. The only thing that can change is every node operator has to accept whatever changes they choose to accept, but you don't have to accept them.
It's a really tricky one, honestly.
That might be a really. I've watched a lot of your podcasts. That might be one of the best questions, because it stumped me, which is good. I love questions that make you think, and I want to think more about that. But because any of the things that I would normally say in the fiat world, well, if this happens, just can't happen. So, yeah, that's a good one.
There's one thing, and this is like very out of the ordinary. It's very almost it's not impossible, but it's something. It's a black swan. If aliens, if something comes to us that is clearly superior, and if something comes to us and they probably are superior to us because they discovered us and not we them, and they have their own monetary system, they could force their monetary system probably onto us, which makes us probably dump our Bitcoin. This is till now, actually, my best try at what could go wrong with Bitcoin. An alien force is forcing us to use their currencies. And even then, I'm like, I don't know if they really have, because we also now have different countries, but yeah, like you have to go.
They would have to take over the whole world, right? And
yeah, exactly.
Cut all of us off.
They have to be really a lot of people, or like a lot of whatever they call themselves, and they have to be really superior to humans, which I don't think is impossible. But then it's so outlandish that you cannot, like, there's nothing to prepare for that one. Anyway, so like you might as well just stick with Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll accept that. I'll accept asteroids or aliens or any of that, because to me that's so far-fetched. That works. That's a good one.
Yeah, really cool. Thank you so much, Terence, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
X is the best place, of course. X, Twitter, just proof of money. I'm there all day long and doing the spaces every morning, 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. For 2 hours. Monday through Friday, we do a big Bitcoin Today spaces with a lot of Bitcoiners, and it's a lot of fun. So they can find me and everybody else there. And I'm also still as the Bitcoin advisor, so I can help anybody with multi-sig setups with their wallets and inheritance solutions. So
really cool. Thank you so much for taking the time, Terence. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another show. Bye-bye. Oh man, today I said show, not episode.